Hi, my name is Bob Reiter. I'm a second-year faculty member here in the School of Library and Information Studies at the University of Alabama. Here at SLIS, something we're very proud of is that we're a close-knit community. Last year, 2011, on April 27th, we were all affected by the tornado, which struck and devastated Tuscaloosa. What follows is going to be a series of narratives, telling stories about how members of our community, was affected as a whole. But more importantly, there are also narratives about how we came together and helped one another. Faculty, staff, students, the various members that make up our community. But more importantly, it's a story of friends and how we all came to help each other out.
My name is John Sermon. I'm a third-year student at the MFA in the Book Arts program at the University of Alabama. I had gone into school that morning early to work and came home early that afternoon. I started to feel antsy and weird about the weather, and after looking outside and beginning to get concerned, I felt the pressure drop in my ears and in my apartment and immediately turned to run for my bathtub. Before I could even make it there, I could hear windows shattering out behind me, and once the storm had passed, I came out of the tub, saw the roof was lying on the floor. That night and the next day, the salvage process started. Once I started to get the few things that were worth saving out, I was staying on friends' couches. My birthday was just 4 days after the storm, and I came over to a friend's house because they wanted to hang out for my birthday, and I was still feeling pretty low about the week. And I show up to see all my classmates, my teachers, my coworkers, all there with a cake ready to celebrate my birthday with me, and that was one of the most meaningful moments after the storm and one of the most meaningful birthdays I've ever had. It's been a real blessing to have these people in my life to be able to lift me up and to help each other out. And without it, I know this last year would have been much harder than it could have ever been.
Hello, my name is Stephen McCall. I'm an associate professor here at SLIS. I started right after the tornado went through, going outside, and Edwards and I trekked off with Elizabeth to try to make our way from here just a half a mile away to her house. So we walked up to her house and was able to discover that the tornado had not hit directly, but came close enough to do significant damage to the neighborhood. Coming back the next morning, very early, 5 o'clock in the morning, and there we saw the parade of volunteers. And that's something I won't forget either. Every day the volunteers coming in and providing all kinds of support. It was really a good event from that perspective to see everyone pouring into town to help with that effort.
I'm Louise Daly. I'm a third-year student here at the School of Library and Information Studies. I was sitting on the back deck with a friend and our dogs, and I was only in communication with the world at large really through my smartphone. We were downplaying perhaps the danger, and because we just experienced a couple of tornadic events a couple of weeks ago, and the first real sign that I knew something was really wrong was when I actually saw the tornado, and it took up the entire horizon. We immediately ran into the small 3-bedroom house where we lived. We're in the hallway. It was the only room in the house that had no windows. It was at that moment that every window in the house exploded, and a great deal of debris came into the house. The roof came off part of the house and began to suck us up out of the hallway. It was all over pretty quickly once it happened, and I got up and sort of dusted myself off and went out, and it was like just flattened, twisted nothingness. It really was almost like being beamed to another planet. There were people from the school who contacted me immediately to see that we were all right. I would like to actually recognize the Tuscaloosa Public Library where I was employed at the time, because they did send personnel on library time to help cut me out. It was great to be part of this SLIS family and to know, that somebody was looking for us and that everyone was going to be accounted for. And it's been a long but a fruitful year. It really kept me going, the academic experience, and having something to move forward with something that I could use to occupy my mind as, Tuscaloosa rebuilds and I sort of reconstruct my life.
Elizabeth Aversa, and I am a faculty member here at SLIS. I was the director of the program from 2003 until 2011. So I had the duty and the opportunity to work with our students, faculty, staff, and others around the time of the 2011 April 27th tornado. I began to think about the ramifications for the School of Library and Information Studies, and I realized as the director of the school that it was my responsibility to account for everyone, our students, our staff, and our faculty. We had no telephone, we had no internet connectivity, we had no electric power. I came up to the university because they had a connection, and there I found the most wonderful thing. Our students, who include a number of students who study from a distance, had begun to communicate with each other even before I got to my house. They constructed a database and asked people to check in and to tell us their condition, what they needed, what the state of their own situation was. These were students from Mississippi, from Long Island, New York, from California. They took the skills and abilities that they learned here with information technology and used it in the best possible way through the database and one of the shared documents that some of the students had set up, and through Facebook. Before I even began looking, I could account for half of our 300 and some odd people. We were fortunately able to account for everyone. What followed the storm was also an affirmation of how wonderful the library and information community is. Our colleagues at the University of Tennessee included our students' names and created a banner for our students who did not have commencement in May. Dave Fensky from Drexel, Diane Barlow and Trudy Bellardo at Maryland, Delia Newman at Drexel, got their heads together and they started a campaign called Totes for Tuscaloosa. Meanwhile, people here at the library, Jill Grogg, the Associate Dean, and others were collecting bags. All told, we delivered over 3,000 bags to the volunteer services here in Tuscaloosa. And that was all from the library and information education community. It was our students and our community that helped get me as director through this disaster. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful that my colleagues all survived this. I think the university did a wonderful job of taking care of its own during this crisis, and this is one of the many reasons that I am so fond of the University of Alabama and our SLIS community.
My name is William Landau, and I'm a second-year student here at SLIS. I had heard the day before that the storm would be rolling through the area and that it could be severe. I remember the power going out, but surprisingly the Wi-Fi stayed up, and it was through Dr. McCall's computer that I saw James Spann reporting the tornado. After I had seen the extent of the devastation, something clicked within me that I needed to go out and be a part of the recovery effort the best that I could. The next day, my girlfriend and I packed up 2 Vera Bradley bags full of water and the sandwiches, and we set out on foot. And I had heard of a couple people that I knew, including Professor Steve Miller, who had suffered great losses. That's where I went first, and I saw Steve. And Steve said something that I'll never forget to this day. As I'm walking over twisted power lines and mangled trees, he said, watch your step, mind the daylilies. And I'll never forget that, because it showed such perseverance, and it showed a person that just absolutely, when really was looking at the loss of almost every material possession that he had, was able to see through that and make a joke like that, and it'll stay with me forever. I was amazed at the kindness of strangers that was shown, and I was also amazed at how active SLIS was as a cohesive family. It wasn't just a department, but it turned into really a family. That's really what I remember from the storm the most, was the way that SLIS pulled together, the people in this department pulled together and really did care about each other in the greatest time of need.
Hi, I'm Steve Miller. I teach in and coordinate the MFA in the Book Arts program at the School of Library and Information Studies. On April 27th of this last year, we were all downstairs through this tornado warning, and I had a really funny feeling. For the first time, I decided during one of those warnings I had to go home. I drove quickly through silent streets and strange, still weather to get home. We were watching the weather on the television when it said that a humongous tornado was on the ground 4 miles southwest of Tuscaloosa, heading right at us. We grabbed up all the pets and ran down into the basement, and we hit the ground in the basement, and within a few seconds, the loudest noise I had ever heard in my life was directly overhead. It was overhead for 1 minute and 5 seconds, where I could hear parts of the house being destroyed above me. We waited a bit and then pushed things aside and crawled out of the basement to come out into what looked like a nuclear blast zone. Everything that I knew for all the years that I lived and worked on my old house, everything was decimated. That night, we stayed in a house nearby that had one room in the middle that was undamaged. And it was a night of fires in other houses, the sounds of sirens, no cell phones, no electricity, wires everywhere, trees downed everywhere, just the skulls of houses on the horizon. It was like the end of the world. The next morning we got up early. We started as neighbors to carve our way through the trees with chainsaws out of the neighborhood to get some access out. A thing that shocked me and for the first time raised emotion in me was seeing through some of the greenery of the downed trees that we were trying to get through. My boss, Dr. Elizabeth Laversa, and Dr. Steve McCall, who had walked in and were trying to find me. And then started a whole line of folks, colleagues, faculty members, staff members, many students from the book arts and from the library school program all trudged in to bring in waters, to bring in boxes and garbage bags and work gloves, and put in their time to help us, get through this really difficult time. Quickly, I realized that I was totally involved in a community here at the School of Library and Information Studies. I thought the response of SLIS was phenomenal. It's been a wonderful year of recovery from the trauma inside of a community that really cares.
My name is Heidi Julian. I'm the relatively new director at the school here, and I joined the school in August of last summer, which was a few months after the tornado. Watching it from afar, it unfolded for me through the media. I have to say that I found it to be a very difficult few days in my experience as well, because I had come to the campus in February and really gotten to know in a very short period of time people on this hallway. By the time the tornado hit, I had accepted the job and was very busy making preparations to come. So it was horrifying to be so many thousands of miles away from folks who I really did care about. And it was with great relief that I learned that nobody in the immediate SLIS community had lost their lives. One of the most heartwarming and fabulous aspects of the experience that I had from afar was watching how the Tuscaloosa community and the SLIS community itself came together to support one another immediately following the tornado. It was fabulous to know that I was coming to a place where people cared for one another so deeply and supported one another in such important ways.